It was supposed to be a day of renewal, a day of faith. But instead, I came home to uncover a secret that would shatter my life. What I found behind closed doors changed everything. Let me take you back to Ash Wednesday, the day everything fell apart, and the day I began to rebuild. Ash Wednesday has always been a meaningful day for me, a moment to pause, reflect, and start anew. As a devout Catholic, it was a tradition I cherished, marking my forehead with ashes to symbolize humility and repentance. This year, I woke up feeling particularly grateful. My life seemed stable. I had a good career as a civil engineer, a comfortable home, and a loving wife, Mary, who worked as a successful real estate agent. That morning, the routine was like any other. Mary had her usual coffee, her blonde hair perfectly styled as she prepared to head out the door. "Don't forget to get your ashes after work," she reminded me with a playful smile. "I wouldn't miss it," I said, smiling back. As she left, I couldn't help but think about how blessed I was. Mary and I had built a life together that felt almost too good to be true. But in the back of my mind, there was a nagging feeling I couldn't shake, a small voice I dismissed as paranoia. Little did I know, that feeling was about to unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. The workday passed uneventfully. I wrapped up early, excited to head to the church before the evening rush. But when I arrived, I saw the line snaking around the block. It seemed like everyone in town had the same idea. I parked my car and debated what to do. The line wasn't moving fast, and my stomach growled lunchtime had long passed. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to head home for a quick bite and return later when the crowd thinned out. The drive home was uneventful, my mind occupied with thoughts of what to eat. I pictured myself relaxing for a few minutes, maybe catching up on the news before heading back out. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Mary's car in the garage. Must have come home early, I thought, smiling to myself. I didn't think much of it as I unlocked the front door, but the silence inside was unsettling. It wasn't the comforting quiet of a home, it felt off. What I didn't know was that stepping into that house would set into motion a chain of events that would forever change my life. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of our home greeting me, but something was different. As I walked through the living room, faint laughter floated down from upstairs, Mary's laugh. It was light, playful, the kind of laugh that used to be reserved for moments we shared, but there was something about it now that made my chest tighten. I froze, listening. There was another voice, a man's voice, deep and smooth. The realization hit me like a cold wave. We weren't alone. My hands began to tremble, my mind racing with possibilities. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was an innocent visit. But as I climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last, the muffled voices became clearer. Words of affection, intimate whispers. My breath caught in my throat as I reached the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I saw them, Mary and her boss, Dr. Henry Turner. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his hand tracing lazy circles on her bare shoulder as she leaned into him. My world shattered in that instant. The woman I loved, the person I trusted most, was sharing a moment so intimate it felt like a dagger straight to my heart. I pushed the door open fully. "Mary," I said, my voice low but steady. She jerked away from him, her face pale as she stared at me. "Mark, But I wasn't there for excuses. My gaze shifted to Dr. Turner, who looked as stunned as she did. "This is what you've been doing while I'm out working?" I asked, my voice growing louder, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. The room was suffocating, filled with tension so thick it was hard to breathe. Dr. Turner stood up, adjusting his shirt and stammering, "Mark, I think we should talk about this." "Talk?" I barked a bitter laugh, pulling out my phone and hitting record. "By all means, explain. This should be good." Mary stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Mark. Let me explain." I held up a hand to stop her. "Explain what? That you've been sneaking around with your boss? In our home? On Ash Wednesday of all days?" She sobbed harder, trying to reach for me, but I stepped back, the betrayal cutting deeper with every passing second. Dr. Turner, perhaps emboldened by the silence, tried to speak. "Look, this isn't what it seems." "Save it," I snapped. "It's exactly what it seems." The phone in my hand captured every word, every tear, every excuse they tried to offer. It wasn't just evidence for the courts, it was my proof that this nightmare was real, that I wasn't imagining the scene unfolding before me. Mary crumbled onto the bed, her hands covering her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered through her sobs. "You didn't mean for it to happen," my voice rose, the pain morphing into a rage I could barely contain. "You chose this, Mary. You destroyed us." The silence that followed was deafening. I turned and walked out, leaving them both in the wreckage of their choices. My mind was spinning, my heart shattered, but one thing was clear: I could never look at Mary the same way again. Later that evening, Mary called me, her voice shaky but pleading. I was sitting in my car, parked at a dimly lit lot, trying to make sense of what had happened. I almost ignored her call but decided to pick up. I needed answers, even if they'd hurt. "Mark, please," she began, her voice thick with tears. "I need to explain. Can we just talk?" I reluctantly agreed to meet her back at the house, not out of sympathy, but because I needed to hear her reasoning. I needed to know why she had destroyed everything we'd built. When I arrived, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, her face blotchy from crying. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had kissed me goodbye that morning. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her until I remembered why we were here. "Start talking," I said coldly. She took a deep breath, her hands twisting nervously. "It wasn't about love, Mark. It wasn't even about him." She paused, her eyes darting to the floor. "It was about money." "Money," I repeated, my voice rising. "What does money have to do with you sleeping with your boss?" She flinched but pushed on. "The breast implants," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I felt like I needed them to stay competitive in real estate. Clients, they expect a certain look. Henry offered to help pay for them." I stared at her, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. "So what?" I said bitterly. "You sold yourself for implants." It wasn't like that, she protested, tears spilling down her cheeks. "At first it was just about the money. I thought I could handle it." But then her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Her excuses only deepened the betrayal, showing me how little she had valued our marriage. That night I left the house and didn't look back. The walls that once felt like home now felt like a prison, suffocating me with the weight of what had happened. I drove aimlessly for hours, replaying the scene in my mind like a broken record. Her laughter, his touch, her excuses. Every memory felt like another nail in the coffin of our relationship. Eventually, I ended up at a motel on the outskirts of town. It was a small, dingy place, but it offered me something my house no longer could piece. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone in my hand. The video of the confrontation was still there, a painful reminder of everything I had lost. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't want to hear Mary's apologies or explanations anymore. I wanted out. The process was painful, but I was determined to sever ties and move forward. For weeks, I avoided Mary's calls and texts, focusing instead on my own recovery. Meanwhile, word of the affair began to spread. Dr. Turner's reputation took a major hit. His patients, mostly women, couldn't trust a man who'd exploit his position so brazenly. His once thriving practice began to crumble. Mary wasn't spared either. In our small, tight-knit community, news travels fast. Her colleagues in real estate whispered about her behind her back, and clients started pulling their listings. The life she had sacrificed our marriage for was falling apart. But none of that brought me satisfaction. It didn't undo the betrayal. All I could do was focus on myself and try to rebuild from the wreckage she left behind. The divorce process was a brutal and drawn-out battle. Mary tried to negotiate, pleading for forgiveness and asking for a chance to fix things. But I had no intention of reconciling. The betrayal had burned every bridge between us. In court, the evidence I'd recorded spoke louder than any words. The video of Mary and Dr. Turner left no room for argument. The judge sided with me, granting me a favorable settlement. Mary's actions had not only ended our marriage but had tarnished her credibility, and it showed in the courtroom. Outside of the legal battles, the fallout from the affair continued to ripple through our lives. Dr. Turner's clinic faced backlash from patients who felt betrayed by his moral failure. Many sought treatment elsewhere, and his reputation in the medical community plummeted. His polished image as a respected doctor was replaced by whispers of scandal and infamy. Mary's real estate career suffered as well. Clients were hesitant to work with her, and some even terminated contracts after hearing about the affair. Her colleagues treated her differently, no longer seeing her as the ambitious professional she once was. The glamorous life she had tried to maintain began to crumble. For me, the months following the divorce were a mixture of relief and sadness. I wasn't just mourning the loss of my marriage, I was mourning the illusion of the life I thought we had. Moving forward felt like an uphill battle, but I was determined to rebuild. Healing didn't come easily. The pain of betrayal lingered like a shadow, casting doubt on my ability to trust anyone again. But I knew I couldn't let this define me. I started small, focusing on myself. I took up running, a habit that helped me clear my mind and regain my sense of control. Therapy became a safe space where I could unpack the hurt and understand my emotions. Slowly but surely, I began to let go of the anger and resentment that had consumed me. It wasn't all about healing alone, though. I reconnected with old friends and surrounded myself with people who reminded me of my worth. They were my anchors, keeping me grounded as I navigated this new chapter of my life. 2 years later, I met Samantha. She was different from Mary in every way. Samantha was kind, genuine, and honest, qualities I hadn't realized I had been missing. There was no pretense with her, no hidden agenda. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. As our relationship deepened, I found myself opening up to her in ways I never thought possible. She didn't judge my past or the scars I carried. Instead, she helped me see that those scars were a testament to my strength. Now, as we prepare to welcome twins into the world, I feel a sense of peace I never thought I'd find again. Life has a way of surprising you, of showing you that even after the darkest storms, there's light waiting to guide you forward. 3 years after the divorce, life had settled into a comforting rhythm. I was happily remarried to Samantha, and we were eagerly awaiting the arrival of our twins. The wounds from Mary's betrayal had mostly healed, replaced by a deeper appreciation for the second chance at happiness I'd been given. One afternoon, while working on a project at home, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Mary. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. "Mark, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. Please, just give me a chance." I debated whether to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but another part was curious. What could she possibly have to say after all this time? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her in a public cafe later that week. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table. Time had changed her. She looked tired, her once bright demeanor replaced by a quiet sadness. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "What do you want, Mary?" She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she folded them on the table. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, and I know I can never undo the pain I caused." Her voice cracked as she continued. "I've lost so much, Mark, my career, my reputation. But losing you was the hardest. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." I let her words hang in the air before responding. "I appreciate the apology, Mary, but it doesn't change the past. I've moved on, and I'm happy now. You should focus on finding peace for yourself." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of closure. Mary's apology didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me of how far I'd come since that fateful day. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that life has a way of teaching us the lessons we need, even if they come through hardship. Mary's betrayal had been one of the most painful experiences of my life, but it also forced me to grow in ways I never imagined. I learned that resilience isn't about avoiding pain, it's about finding the strength to move forward despite it. Trusting again wasn't easy, but Samantha showed me that love built on honesty and respect is worth the risk. As I stood in the nursery, preparing for the arrival of my twins, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. My journey had been difficult, but it had led me to a place of true happiness and fulfillment. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've enjoyed this story or found it meaningful, please like, share, and comment below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about resilience, growth, and finding hope in the face of life's challenges. Until next time, take care and stay strong.